Welcome back into the college football every game on the board podcast, part number 2 with our two-hole hitter at Teddy_covers from Wager Talk and SportsMemo.com. Teddy, welcome in. How you feeling?
Hey, great to be here, Drew. We're in mid-November already, man. This college football season's blown by. Back on track in college football as well. The last two Saturdays have been the right kind of Saturdays after a pretty crappy October, no question about it. But we have the stretch run right here in college football. I'm excited about it, and in much better current form than in recent podcasts. So I could smile a little bit today. Let's see if we can keep it rolling. Drew, and break down, what do we got? 15 games to break down on this part of the card. Let's roll.
We're getting after it here, guys. 147 down to 176, the rotation number. If you go to the Wager Talk live odds screen, those little numbers next to the team name on the college football betting board. We are going down in numerical order. Mid-major Matt just broke down the first section. We'll bring in Kelly Stewart and Rob Vino tomorrow to break down the part 3 and part 4. But part number 2 coming to you now at Drew Martin Bets on Twitter, at Teddy_covers in the Wager Talk YouTube channel, uploaded just shortly. We got South Carolina and Florida up next, 4 o'clock Eastern here in the swamp. Teddy, 147, 148, 59 being the total. We're seeing the Gators minus 8-point home favorites. Are you liking anything in Gainesville, Florida on Saturday?
I have to apologize. I'm having appear to be having some type of computer or connectivity issues. I'm not sure if it's going on your end, Drew, but you're coming in and out. And my headphones just went off, or my earbuds just went off, and sound's coming out of the camera now. So I'll do the best I can. We're going live.
Okay.
Nonetheless, let's talk South Carolina and Florida. Do we trust Spencer Rattler against a good defense? We do not. All right. And that's pretty clear at this stage of the game. We like Rattler when he can light up a bad defense like he did last week against Vanderbilt. When South Carolina has faced the better defenses on their schedule, we've seen a lot of struggles from Rattler. Florida hasn't turned the ball over in any of their last 3 ball games. And you look at who they played during that span. They're not turning the ball over against some good defenses during that span, which is probably something of a buy sign for the Gators when you look at the fact that, hey, we didn't turn the ball over against LSU or Georgia or Texas A&M. That's a good sign. A very good sign for a quarterback in Richardson who's had his fair share of struggles this year. And last week, what they were able to do against Texas A&M, where the running game got going, the passing game was able to complement it. That's what Florida wants to do. I think they'll have some success doing that against South Carolina. But the stronger opinion here is towards the total. I do like the under in this matchup. In fact, I like it enough that we'll talk about it at the end of the show.
All right, guys. Vanderbilt and Kentucky. And Teddy, just so you know, you're coming through crystal clear. 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Vanderbilt at Kentucky, 47 being the total, minus 18. That's the Wildcats in Lexington.
Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just switching headphones out so I can just talk for a sec, Drew.
All right, guys. We got Vanderbilt and Kentucky here. I don't know. Will Levis in Kentucky offensively really hasn't. I almost worry that he's injured or something. So I'm not one to lay near 3 touchdowns with Kentucky. But Vanderbilt at the same time, not a team that I've really pinned in bet on or bet against for that reason. But I don't know, not a game that I'm going to bet. Teddy, do we got you or should I move down?
Yeah. No, I'm good now. Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry. I had to put headphones in that I could hear what the heck you're talking about. And we're going live, so I can't say, all right, let's start over. But look, when it comes to Kentucky's not an easy team to lay 18 points with. All right. That's not the way they're built. They want to run the football. They run the football very effectively. Vandy has, I'm not going to say given him a challenge, but Vandy's been able to hang within the number in recent meetings against Kentucky. This is not a Wildcats team that we're very excited about laying points with. Certainly not in this point spread range. That being said, Vandy's a real tough team to put my money on right now. We're not seeing anything in terms of getting better, improvement in the lead era at Vanderbilt. Right now, they're getting bombed off the field. The pass defense has been pretty woeful. The Georgia game was woeful. The Mississippi game was woeful. South Carolina moved the ball up and down the field against us last week. This is not a team that we can trust to move the football, and it's not a team that we can trust to get stopped. So it's Kentucky or pass a priori, and that means it's pass because the Wildcats, as you mentioned, they got a quarterback with NFL potential, but I don't know if they've got a receiving core or an offensive line or a game plan to take advantage of that quarterback. I would expect Kentucky to be running the football a whole lot in this one, and they may have success. If they throw the football around, if you watch early on and they're throwing the football, you can lay it because Vandy will not be able to stop the pass. They can't stop anyone who's chucking the football around. And this might be the type of game that Kentucky gets well, the type of opponent that Kentucky gets well against. But they just haven't covered numbers like this. Not this year, not in recent seasons, and not against Vanderbilt. So I don't want the dog.
Nebraska, Michigan up next. Wolverines minus 31 at home, 48.5 being the total in the big house.
Yeah, every time I want to step in front of Michigan, either I've lost or I've been glad I didn't. Look, this is a 3-point game last year. Okay. When we look at Nebraska's defense, forget the offense for a minute. Defensively, Nebraska hasn't allowed 31 points 4 times in their last 5 games. Heck, for the majority, Oklahoma had that game where they blew them out. Obviously, they had the weird game against Georgia Southern early, but since the coaching changed, they had the one game against Purdue where they covered and scored 37 in that contest. But other than that, it's been solid defensive showings. Now, they haven't faced an offense like Michigan's yet. Agreed. But what we saw last half from the Wolverine, or last week from the Wolverines, where they, were trailing at halftime and ended up covering minus 26 with room to spare at the end. I guess they're capable of doing that week in, week out. That's not the team I necessarily want my money on. There's no betting, there's no bandwagon for the Huskers here, but I continue to think that Michigan is just priced a little bit too high. Again, this was a 3-point game a year ago, and I know that things have gone very south for Nebraska, but I'm not convinced that they're 28 points difference from where they were last year at this time. Lean to the dog.
An ugly one up next in the ATL here, Teddy. 3:30 Eastern, 153, 154s. We're making our way down in numerical order. Every game on the board. Miami Hurricanes, Georgia Tech, Yellow Jackets. We're seeing Georgia Tech minus 1.5 home favorites, 44 being the total in Bobby Dodd.
Yeah, so pick your poison in this one. One of the things that I got right last week in college football was betting against Miami. That was pretty easy. Florida State 45, Miami 3, and it wasn't that close. That's Miami. Their last point spread cover came on opening day when they were 50-point favorites against Bethune-Cookman. All right, the Mario Cristobal era has been a disaster. An absolute disaster for Miami. And by the way, it's only his first year on the job. This could get ugly. This is a team that's showing legit signs of quit on both sides of the football. The offense doesn't work. They have an NFL. Remember, Van Dyke was supposed to be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
All right. Remember? And he's been in and out of the lineup. He's hurt. He's not hurt. It doesn't matter if he plays or not. It really doesn't. The offense is broken. The defense is broken. They've quit on the coach, and it's Georgia Tech or pass. So do you want Georgia Tech? I took a shot with Georgia Tech a couple. I was like, oh, yeah, they're playing better. They're playing much better for sure. Yeah, they won a couple games in a row. I had them against Virginia, and they scored 9 points in that game, and they had no chance. They had no chance. The offense didn't work. Now, the following weekends for Florida State, offense didn't work. Now, last weekend's Virginia Tech, all of a sudden, they're moving the football a little bit. So maybe there's hope for the Yellow Jackets in the post-Collins era. I know I don't want Miami. So if I'm playing the game as Georgia Tech, I just feel like I've learned my lesson already with that team. They were +3 in turnovers against Virginia Tech last week. That helped in a big way for them to get over the hump. But are they going to do that again? The defense is 4 turnovers week in, week out. Georgia Tech does have a bet on defense. It's the offense that I worry about. Yellow Jackets are pass, clearly, but it'll probably be a pass for me.
Louisville, Clemson staying in the ACC here, 155, 156, 52.5 being the total. Tigers -7 in Clemson, South Carolina, Teddy.
Yeah, so I went back and looked for the last decade. What happens when Clemson loses their first game? Because I thought it was meaningful. It's a team that doesn't lose a whole lot of regular season games. When they do lose, how do they respond? And the answer was there's no trend. A lot of the games the next week came right around the number. I was stunned at how many of them, 9.5, they win by 10, but, or 10.5, they win by 10. Lots of games that were relatively close to the number. Clemson's been a disappointment in some ways this season. In other ways, they've been an overachiever, So it feels like the mainstream media didn't notice the dip for Clemson and the rise for Clemson.
Right.
It's not an offense I'm excited about laying points with. Louisville hung within this number last year. And there's two teams we're going to talk about that real quiet have made a whole lot of noise in recent weeks. Louisville's one of those teams. And no one's talking about Louisville right now. They've won 4 in a row. 2 of them as underdogs. 5 out of 6. They're playing the best football by far of the Satterfield era right now. The defense has been dominant week in, week out. And even the most recent loss, the loss to Boston College, I watched that game, was a weird game. And BC got hot, and then down the stretch, it came back and won it. But, this team could easily be riding a 6-game winning streak right now. No one's talking about Louisville. The defense is there. The offense is moving the football. They hung within the number last year. Cardinal are on my short list this week.
Like it, Teddy. Good start here, guys. We head to the Big 12 up next. Kansas at Texas Tech, 7 o'clock Eastern kick in Lubbock, Texas. -3.5. That's the Red Raiders at home, Teddy. 64 at most shops being the total.
Yeah, the betting markets are not in love with Kansas the way that we've seen the public fall in love with Kansas at times this season. Not even close. We're seeing Kansas, I'm not going to say disrespected, but they're giving, based on their statistical profile, this is not a team that is drawing any significant wise guy support. Now, last week, the win over Oklahoma State, look, that was a nice win. And they ran for, 350 yards in doing so, passed for 200. I mean, it was a really impressive game. They turned the ball, Okie State over 4 times. And I will say this defense has forced multiple turnovers in 5 straight games and 7 of the last 8. I mean, the Jayhawks are winning the turnover battle week in, week out, whether it's been the starter at QB in Daniels or the backup in Bean. Hasn't mattered. That's been their MO, is winning turnover battles, which is allowing them to win some of these ball games. But this point spread's telling us something here. Look, the Red Raiders, I know that they've been choppy for extended stretches this season, but there's hope for this program right now. And yeah, they're coming off a loss to TCU, but again, they battled with the team that hasn't lost a game all year. Now they're back home. They're facing a team they can beat. Facing a team they beat by margin last year. They beat them by 4 touchdowns last year. I would not be surprised at all to see Texas Tech win and cover this number. But on the same token, I'm not convinced Kansas is a team I really want to step in front of. So it's probably going to be a lean towards the Red Raiders. I don't know that I get to the betting window with this one.
He's Teddy Covers, a mainstay on the Every Game on the Board podcast. Check him out at Wagers Talk and sportsmemo.com. And he's hot right now. In November, all sports 70%. 14-6, that is. NBA's 10-3, 77% run. So if you're looking for an NBA handicapper, he's your guy. Knows his college football, NFL as well. Long-term, one of the best records out there, 55% since week 1 of 2015. That includes 8 seasons in the NFL. Teddy Covers, Wager Talk, sportsmemo.com. We got noon Eastern here, SMU in South Florida, Teddy. Up next, 159-160 as we're making our way down every game on the board in numerical order using the Wager Talk Live odds screen, hitting every single game on the college football betting board. -17.5, that's SMU as the road favorite, 72 being the total in Raymond James Stadium, Teddy.
Yeah, I was watching SMU Houston last week, and then I got whiplash because my head kept on going. I mean, that game flew over the total by halftime and finished 77-63. But yes, that's 20 touchdowns scored. 11 of them came from SMU. I don't think they punted. They didn't punt against Maryland either in that game, back earlier in the season. I mean, this is an offense that is capable of putting up points in bunches against just about everyone they face. And USF isn't going to stop them. USF isn't stopping anyone. South Florida's rough, man. It's been an ugly season. It's a one-way game. I don't want the bottom feeder. I don't even want to consider the bottom feeder in this one. The question is, can SMU get the stops? And off of that insane game last week, do they have the mentality to keep driving here? -17, -17.5. Yeah, the number's right. It's not a game I'm likely to play.
Southern
Lean
Miss.
over.
Okay. Lean over. Yeah, it's tough to bet an SMU game under, that's for sure. Southern Miss and Coastal Carolina up next, Teddy, Saturday night in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, right thereabouts anyway. 49 being the total. We're seeing the Chanticleers -5.5 point home favorites.
Yeah, and of course, it's been all money for the Southern Miss in this one because Grayson McCall has been ruled out for Coastal Carolina. Went back. He's been their starter. He's a third-year starter. I think he's only missed one start during that span. It's not like they've got a backup that can come in and replace him. And we're certainly seeing the betting markets react to that with not just a little money, a whole lot of money flowing on the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. That's all about the quarterback injury for the Chanticleers. So the question you want to ask yourself, is, okay, all this Southern Miss money, are they good enough? Are they capable? This isn't a good offense. I mean, they've had multiple turnovers in each of their last 5 games. All right, they don't run the football effectively. Last week, they have 33 yards on the ground against Georgia State. This is not a defense that we trust against the run or the pass. And I understand in college football, it's really hard to bet on a team when there's a backup quarterback coming in and you don't know what he's capable of doing. I know this. I don't trust Southern Miss to hang tough. Not against this quality of foe. Coastal Carolina is real. And Southern Miss, they've been a good point spread team. Maybe they're undervalued again here. But I don't want the dog.
Teddy, next game up, Sunbelt, UL Monroe, Georgia State, Panthers minus 13.5. 58.5 being the total in the old Turner Field.
Well, you give each handicapper the option to pass one game. And usually I don't take the option. But I got nothing on this game. I have no idea what to do with either one of these two teams. They're not teams that I bet a whole lot this year. They're not teams that I got to read on this year. This, Drew, will be my pass. You got a take on it?
Like it, Teddy. My take is, I guess, for the every game on the board faithful, Teddy is right. Each handicapper gets a pass going down. They could even take 2 towards the end of the season, but it just becomes a little bit difficult for guys to keep up with so many sports going on. So we'll probably just leave it where it is. I mean, Georgia State, I don't know. They've kind of been up and down, and Monroe is getting better. Yeah. So it's not our grandma's Louisiana Monroe anymore. They got a couple hogs been there to kind of on their defensive line, but still 2 touchdowns. I'm not going to be betting this one, Teddy. We got App State Marshall up next. Speaking of a good matchup here, competitively priced -1. That's the Mountaineers as the road favorite. 47.5 being the total in Huntington, West Virginia.
So App State's the favorite in the conference. They're the class of the conference. They're an elite team. And now they've just suffered another loss. And they ain't winning the conference. They lost to, they lost to North Carolina to open. Then they lost to James Madison. Then they lost to Texas State. Now they have a loss to Coastal Carolina. They were all competitive games, but they came up on the short end of all of them. And I wonder how this team bounces back. I really do. This is a team that had expectations up to here. And I don't know that they bounce back. I really don't. This is a team that's found ways to lose games that they probably should have won. And again, you talk about, and Marshall's not with the other team I was saying. There's 2 teams that have been real quiet under the radar that people aren't talking about. Marshall's not one of them. Maybe they should be. Look at this defense. Remember the win at Notre Dame? That doesn't look as weird anymore. And then they lost the following week, a 17-point chalk to Bowling Green. They weren't into it. Since that time, they've allowed 16, 7, 23, 12, 24, and 0 points. Right? That defense is stocked. They have had, during that span, 4 different games in which the defense has forced at least 3 turnovers. All right. It's not an offense that we trust, but it sure as hell is a defense that we trust. And they can run the football. It's a team that I think they'll have some success running the ball, grinding out the clock, and playing defense. That's Marshall's game plan. So there's definitely some correlation here between side and total. Marshall ain't winning a shootout in this one. Lean Marshall, lean under.
167, 168. Next one up with about 5 games remaining here for this section. JMU, that's James Madison, on the road, Norfolk, Virginia, up against Old Dominion. 46.5 being the total. JMU, the Dukes, -8-point road favorites, Teddy.
Yeah, and you talk about a matchup between 2 teams that have gone south in recent weeks. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't James Madison, were they ranked? I pay no attention to the rankings whatsoever. I think they were ranked at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, I believe so, like 24 or 25. I don't either, but I think so.
Yeah. So Old Dominion, remember I watched them beat Arkansas State. I'm like, man, this team's coming alive. Or maybe it was Coastal Carolina. It was a Coastal Carolina game. Wow, here comes Old Dominion. And they lost 3 of their last 4, And the last couple of losses, whether it's with the Coastal Carolina game. They've lost their last 3 since then. I'm sorry. They had the Georgia Southern loss, and then Georgia State, and then last week shut out by Marshall. So whatever magic they found hasn't lasted. They've been a point spread loser for the extended stretches this season. And the last couple of weeks, they just haven't played good football, and they can't stop the run. You know, when you're getting outrushed 298-11 and 218-26, that's been the numbers against Georgia State and Marshall. That's problematic. Now, admittedly, those are college football numbers that count in sacks, but even with the sacks, that's a problem for Old Dominion. But James Madison, again, this is a team that was a new entrant into the D1 ranks. They got out to this ridiculous start. They got ranked, and they basically have stunk up the joint ever since, which is what you kind of expect for a team like James Madison. You know, that 3 straight losses. Again, Georgia Southern, Marshall, 2 of the same teams that the Old Dominion lost to, and then last week a bad loss to Louisville. Now, this might well be a get-right spot for them, certainly from defensive class. Again, we talked about how good Marshall's defense is. We talked about how good Louisville's defense is. That's the 2 defenses they faced the last 2 weeks. This week they get ODU. That's a step down. But is this team and program capable of righting the ship after those 3 straight losses, after that 5-0 start? It's one of those deals. Do you really want to lay 8 with James Madison this week? You know, on a skid. It's their get-right game, but the price feels a little bit high to me. And again, you know, they had all those turnovers. There were 9 turnovers offensively against Georgia Southern and Marshall. Avoided the turnovers against Louisville last week, but that's only because they didn't have the football. They couldn't move the football at all. I don't know. I ain't laying 8, but that's the only way I can play it.
Teddy, my follow-up question to you, Old Dominion. Do you know what the background to that name is of that university? I've always been kind of shocked by there's actually a college named Old Dominion.
No idea.
Okay. Yeah, me neither. Just kind of always brings a smile to my face. But hey, the next game up here, Teddy, arguably the biggest game on the slate from a fan perspective, UCF and Tulane, 3:30 on Saturday. The Green Wave -1, -1.5 home favorites, 54.5 being the total. America's Conference in the Big Easy. Are you liking anything UCF and Tulane, Teddy?
So Tulane's the other team. Tulane's, I didn't realize they were ranked. I'm like, geez, this team's 8-1 straight up, 8-1 against the spread, and no one's talking about them. No one's. And when Willie Fritz got the job, we're like, watch out for Willie Fritz. He's going to build something.
It took him a while.
It did. Well, they were patient enough with him. And look what they're doing right now. They're killing teams. All right. This is a one-way team, both sides of the football. All right. And they survived the we got ranked game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which you worry about when you go on the road and you get ranked like against Tulsa. They survived that. I'll give them credit, a lot of credit for that. UCF's a tough matchup for this team. All right, you know the Knights, they play. They have defensive speed that is very real, which is going to be problematic for Tulane, I believe. That being said, they also have a quarterback injury. You know, we don't know if Plumlee's going to go this week, and we've said it a couple times on the show this year. You know, UCF. How do you beat UCF? You stop the run and force them to throw the football. Well, they might have a backup quarterback this week, and they're playing a pretty good run defense in Tulane's. So, in theory, the Green Wave have what it takes to continue winning, continue covering numbers. I'm not stepping in front of them here, even though it's a tough matchup for Tulane, no question. They got Central Florida, SMU, and Cincy to close out their season. It might be worth betting on during this stretch run.
I like it, Teddy. Big Ten up next. Northwestern, Minnesota, Golden Gophers -18 at home, 41 being the total.
Year in, year out, Northwestern's been one of my favorite teams. I've had a great read on that team over the years. This year, I don't think I've given you guys one piece of good Northwestern advice all year. I really don't. I've been wrong about them repeatedly. Use them as best bets. Wrong there. Use them as a free play last week against Ohio State. Wrong there. The Wildcats have been a problem for me. That being said, they fought against Ohio State. They gave Ohio State everything they had last week, and they came up 2 touchdowns short. We'll give them credit. Do they have what it takes to keep that level of energy up at Minnesota this week after getting physically pounded last week? I wouldn't count on it. Questions about Tanner Morgan's health again for the Gophers. That's a big concern for me. I don't want to lay a price with Minnesota if their starting quarterback isn't healthy. And of course, that wasn't the case. That was the case last week against Nebraska, where they failed to cover again as 15-point chalk. And again, -9.5, they lose. -4.5, they lose. +5.5, they get destroyed. -15, they have to rally from behind to win. Minnesota's been an overvalued commodity since that hot start, which is another reason why this game is only staying in the lean category. Whatever, it's not even a lean. I'm giving up on Northwest. When you lose betting on and betting against a team multiple ways, and you're just wrong on them, that's a team we're going to put away. We'll talk about Northwestern next year.
Yeah, I'm the same way. When you lose on them multiple ways, just kind of put them in the basket of really don't bet on. So hey, sometimes you learn it the hard way as a sports bettor, Teddy.
Yeah, and of course, if it was a bowl game, we'd absolutely revisit for bowl season. But yeah, Northwestern ain't going to a bowl game.
So therefore, yeah, you really can throw them
next year
in the trash.
The Wildcats next year.
Teddy, next game up, I have the Dogs circled in this one in the Big Ten. Purdue, the Boilermakers on the road up against Illinois. Illini laying 6.5, 44.5 being the total. So low total, catching near a touchdown here. Purdue's been competitive on the road. You think I'm onto something with the Boilermakers?
I don't know. I'm not convinced that Purdue's offense is going to move the football against Illinois' defense. All right. Even last week against Sparty, that had everything. Situationally, it was a tough spot, I think, for Illinois. They're not used to being on winning streaks. What was the big argument with Bielema, both at the Arkansas and at Wisconsin, was that he lost a lot of games as favorites that he shouldn't, where his team was flat. But this is they're not double-digit dogs, and this is a team that's not a team that's built to be double-digit dogs. Purdue's got a defense of their own, and a pretty good one in that regard. I think an underrated defense. Let's put it this way: I can understand why the money's been coming for the under in this matchup, although now 44.5. It's starting to look a little bit light, but it's not a series. And again, Illinois is not a team I'm worried too much about series history right now because things are so different. But you look last year, 13-9. Illinois 24, Purdue 6. At least one team has been held to 10 points or less in 4 of the last 5 meetings, dating back to 2017. This is going to be a defensive scrum. Illinois wants to play defensive scrums. Purdue this year is comfortable in the defensive scrum type of football. You're not throwing against the Illini. Purdue couldn't move the football last week against Iowa. Illinois' defense in many ways comparable to that. Lean under. And I guess if I can see your case for Purdue. I don't know that Purdue moves the football here. I really don't. Not against it. To move the ball against Illinois, you need balance, and that balance just hasn't been there for the Boilermakers this season. They don't run the football particularly well.
Last game here, heading to the Sun Belt, Texas State in South Alabama, USA -16.5 point home favorites, 47.5 being the total in Mobile, Alabama. To end the segment here, Teddy.
Yeah, and this is the one that I have a strong opinion on. Certainly South Alabama survived the test last week on the road at Georgia Southern, continued their winning ways. They've been a pretty darn good point spread team, and they can run the football. But here at -16.5, is the defense good enough to win this one by margin? That's my concern here. Look, the Bobcats aren't that good. There's a reason they're dogs in this range, but it's not like they're non-competitive. You look at recent losses: 17-14, 20-14, 31-30 last week against Louisiana Monroe. They're hanging around in these games against comparable competition. They might well hang around here. Not a game I'm going to bet.
Teddy covers 2-hole hitter here on every game on the board. We got his most confident play coming up in just a second. Guys, check him out. WagerTalkingSportsMemo.com. He's hot right now. 14-6, 70% all sports in November. NBA 10-3, 77% run. NFL, he's hitting over 55% last 8 seasons combined. Teddy covers WagerTalkSportsMemo.com. Obviously knows his college football here. Teddy, throw it over to you. Final thoughts for the show before we shut it down. If you got a most confident play of the section for us.
Well, I kind of teased it in the very first game that we talked about with Florida and South Carolina. Total here is 59, and that looks really high to me. You know, I don't think the Gamecocks are going to be able to move the football up and down. I don't think the Gamecocks are going to move the football consistently this week, and I think Florida is going to have a pretty run-heavy game plan. They're going to burn clock. So I look for this game to be a relatively low-scoring affair. Florida and South Carolina under 59 is the most confident play.
Teddy Covers, ladies and gentlemen. Check him out. Twitter at Teddy_covers. That does it for part number 2. We'll be back with tomorrow, Robbie Vino and Kelly Stewart to finish off every game on the board. For Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. Thanks for tuning in. Huge shout out to Jake on YouTube chiming in, and please smash that like button, guys. Cash those tickets. We'll be back.